All right, cool. Well, welcome to my podcast. Appreciate you taking the time to sit down and have a little chat with me tonight. I think we're going to stick mostly with, basically your background and all that good stuff. But if you want to do a small, I always hate this question in my interviews. Like, tell us a little bit more about yourself. But
Mhm.
I guess to give the listeners a little bit of a background about you, why don't you just give them like a brief, small little tidbit?
So I'm a food scientist, chemical engineer. I'm also the owner and founder of Gauge Girl Training, which is an online meal planning and coaching service. I've been there for the last 10 years. Actually, just celebrated my ninth year of business this year, but I'm in my 10th year. And I'm also the owner and founder of Gauge Life Nutrition Supplements. And it was when I first started making YouTube videos that I really started growing my platform online, becoming an educational resource, helping people with their issues and concerns around fat loss. There's a lot of noise out there on the internet, on social media. And I feel like, my platform really grew as I just provided foundation of the science behind it, which is a piece that's really lacking. There's some pieces here and there, but really putting it together in a way that people could wrap their head around was, the basis of, my life's work. So I've been doing that as like a chemical engineer, a scientist, been in biotech, before I even got into the health and wellness space. So, I've been a scientist for a long time, and it's been the foundation of my career and the foundation of my success in the health and wellness space.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you about the information part of that. That there's just so much information. Well, it's also a double-edged sword. So much, it's good and bad at the same time. But
Mhm.
with that said, there's so much that people don't really know to where to find the information they want, or find or even know how to start like a day one lifestyle change or diet or whatever you want to call it. But it sounds like you kind of make that happen with your book, though, so to speak. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it's funny, I've actually been writing this book for 7 years. I first started writing it in 2015 because, like I said, as my YouTube channel started growing in popularity, so many people were asking me for resources to learn more about macros, calories, how to set those numbers up, how to put meal plans together, how do they know what their macros should be. And honestly, there really just wasn't a good resource at the time. And it took me a very long time to put this book together in a form that was very user friendly, in a form that, partnered me with the right publishing house and all that good stuff. But I'm very proud of this project, and I have every confidence that, the 40,000 people that I've worked with and putting this together is going to help even 10x more than that for once people get their hands on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I applaud people like you just because I always consider myself an enemy of nutrition, so to speak, just because, I guess the information's always changing so much, and there's always something new. There's
Mhm.
always a new trend.
Mhm.
And I think ultimately, I really started getting serious about my nutrition probably in 2017 or whatever. And
Mhm.
it was more of just us finding out what works for me and actually doing the information myself, and noticing that obviously everybody's body is different, and not
Mhm.
just because keto, Whole30, carnivore is going to work for you doesn't mean it's not going to work for the person B. Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. And, organizing that in a way that makes sense, because the thing is, there are a lot of diets out there that do work, but I think we need to fundamentally understand why different approaches work and how do you filter through which one is most appropriate for you. And that's what my book, Unlock Your Macro Type, is all about. It's about identifying your true body type, understanding your carb tolerance, helping you accelerate fat loss, but ultimately helping you figure out the best way to fuel your body. So my book, it's not about a, hey, everyone, this is what worked for me, so please
Good.
copy it. It's a, how do we figure out what's right for you?
When you say identify your body type, are you talking about
Mhm.
ecto, meso? Was it what's the third one? Endo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually started talking about a lot of that on my YouTube channel. And, my most popular video was on body types. It has over 2.3 million views, but I kind of take it from that foundation of body types and expand upon it further, because the reality is you can't just look at your body and say this is how somebody should eat. Like, you can't. And for a long time I thought that you could, and the reality is the more data points, the more people I worked with over the years, I realized that there are nuances that truly dictate how you should be eating. And when I say your true body type, I've found that the most important factor that impacts how one should really be fueling their body all boils down to one's unique carb tolerance level. And that's not something that you can gauge just by looking at somebody. So in my book, I unpack that concept more in depth.
So what do you mean by when you say carb tolerance? You just about how much your body wants at one point, or?
No. So, what I mean by carb tolerance, it's the ability for somebody to effectively utilize carbs as a fuel source. And there's so much noise out there where everybody's thinking that low carb is good, high carb is bad, but that's not the case for everyone. Some people thrive off of higher carbohydrates. Other folks truly need to be on lower carb. And there's a spectrum when it comes to carb tolerance. On one end of the spectrum, we have folks with very low carb tolerance. We're talking type 2 diabetics. We're talking people with insulin resistance, people with hormonal imbalances, people who really do benefit from going lower in carbohydrates. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have hard gainers. We have people who thrive and actually are able to build more muscle, lose more fat when they're consuming an appropriate amount of carbohydrates. So identifying where you truly lie on that spectrum is something that's really important for people to acknowledge in and of themselves.
Is this partly because of, everyone's this is kind of touching on a little bit what we talked about a little bit ago, but everyone's microbiome is different, and we need to identify what a person's microbiome wants in order to get the best results?
That's definitely an aspect of carb tolerance. So, gut health is definitely a very big variable that I do address and unpack a little bit in my book, but it's not the only variable. So, gut health is a part of it. Digestive enzymes is a part of it. Your sex hormones is a part of it. Your thyroid hormones is a part of it. And I tie all of those together in a conclusive way and take people through quizzes to really help people pinpoint where they're at on that carb tolerance spectrum. And then once you identify that, I help people figure out their macro type or the best way to fuel your body. Some people do best being fat fueled. Some people do best being protein fueled, and other folks do best being primarily carb fueled.
Yeah, do you know, I can't even think of the name now. I can't even talk. Renaissance periodization. That's the one
Yes.
I've worked with.
Yeah.
And they basically broke down when I worked with them. This was back in 2017, 2018, like when I told you I was getting serious about mine. But I did a fat loss regimen with them, and they broke it down as far as what you said, macros, proteins, carbs, fats, and you weighed out, like, here's your proteins. These are some examples of what you should be eating. Here's your carbs. And I found that, to lean out, obviously, that and actually feel good I'm a CrossFitter. So during my workouts and stuff, and even my competitions, I felt, ready to go. I felt like I still had energy. I just wasn't completely drained. So it was higher protein for me. That's what seems like what's my body wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I took that knowledge with me still today. Am I as strict as I used to be? No, but I know exactly kind of what, I don't weigh my food anymore and stuff, but I kind of just go over quality and versus quantity and just basically, okay, how did I eat, or how did I feel after eating this meal, or how did I eat maybe, or how did I feel increasing my carbs this much or whatever. So, but yeah, obviously it was protein for me that my body is what it liked. So.
Yeah, and I'm a protein fueled macro type as well. And a lot of folks who kind of come from more of like that bodybuilder approach to nutrition, the bodybuilding, the fitness competitors. I used to do tons of fitness competitions back in the day. And, that was a very effective approach for me. But it was really interesting because as my clientele expanded and I wasn't just coaching, 20 women in their 20s and early 30s. And as my client base grew, I found that like that high protein, low fat, moderate carb approach, it just doesn't work for everybody.
Sure.
And once I started getting clients and truly seeing, working with them one-on-one, their body rejecting that approach, I was like, okay, why is that happening? And I needed to identify why. I needed to find other methods that made logical sense. And as I began to unpack that, it was very eye-opening for me as a scientist and researcher, because now I have all these data points. I was like, wow, we really have to consider that there are other variables outside of just be in a caloric deficit, just eat more protein, which kind of happens with that whole bro science, so to speak,
No, exactly. I mean, in college, I was a complete idiot. And, it was always just like, oh yeah, you need to, eat this much chicken and broccoli and brown rice in order to become a bodybuilder. And if you want to
Mhm.
look like this. And that was, of course see, when I graduated, it was '09 when I got my bachelor's, and there's not as much information then, I guess, as there is now, obviously with the internet and podcasts and books. And so, well, I guess books was back then, but yeah, I was just going off what people were telling me. And I didn't know if they were telling me the truth or not. I was like, oh, I guess you look pretty good with your shirt off. I guess I'll listen to what you said, but it doesn't mean
Mhm.
it was actually working then. But, but do you ever find that, with that said, like, as far as all the information and stuff, it's almost information overload for people, and that there's also that a lot of, a lot of not a lot of in-depth research done. It's like you said, being a food scientist on certain,
Mhm.
there's a lot of biased research, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I couldn't agree more. And especially with the growth of social media in the last decade, I
Mhm.
mean, the means in which people get their information is just based off of like algorithms and popularity. And there's folks who are extremely popular, but that doesn't mean like they're qualified by
Sure.
any way, shape, or form. And it's actually quite it's very shocking how much bad information gets like pushed out there. And people don't know what they don't know, and like people trust these influencers with like just this blind faith. And people just care about what they see. They don't really think about, well, okay, that person looks like that, but does that mean that's appropriate for me? How does this person know? And unfortunately, there's just way too much of that going on out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an addict to social media probably just as much as anybody else, but I agree that,
Mhm.
you go down through there and you see, and I don't want to knock anybody. If you're making money off Instagram and
Oh,
you're
for
happy,
sure.
yeah, and you're loving it, that's great. Fine, cool. But yeah, you go down through there and you see people just obviously showing off their ass and stuff. And it's like, oh, you look like me by
Mhm.
doing this. And
Mhm.
okay, that's cool and all, but I don't think it really works. It's not that easy, and
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's where it gets misleading. It gets very misleading, and there's just so many impressionable folks out there, just handing their money over like just hand over fist. And you really need to make sure that the people know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm taking it like you're kind of very similar to
Mhm.
me, that you kind of grew up and you kind of always, you said you did, some fitness competitions and stuff like
Mhm.
that. You always kind of obviously had a knack for this, but there's a lot of people who never grew up not knowing anything about fitness, nutrition, anything, and which that's fine. But again, that's just where, they finally say, hey, on my 30th birthday, I'm going to try to be able to, drop 10 pounds or whatever over the year. And
Mhm.
then they
Mhm.
reach out for the first thing they get. And then they start wondering, okay, first week, maybe lost 2 pounds. Second week, maybe not so much. Third week, all right, this is not working anymore. And so,
Mhm.
and then they found, it's like, well, this diet didn't work. I'll just go back to whatever I did. And it was like, well, look what you did. Maybe you found something on Instagram. Maybe you didn't quite do your homework, which that's not a knock. Somebody just didn't know. And
Agreed.
yeah, and it's just is that kind of what the clients you work with, or more just like, hey, I'm finally want to get the right information. I want to get an expert. I want somebody who can actually
Yeah.
show me the way, rather than just say, go out and shake your ass and you'll have,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's definitely not what my brand is about. And by
good.
the time people find me, like I have close to 1,000 YouTube videos out there now.
Nice.
I've been on there for a decade. And by the time somebody finds me, they've really done their research. I have folks who've been following me for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years before they ever invested in anything. So I have like this ongoing like relationship and like dialogue with my followers. And the reality is, the decision to decide to do something about your health, about your nutrition, about the way you eat, it's a very big, and especially if you're taking it seriously. And people really need to be in the right headspace. They really need to collect their information. And you know what? Like I may not be like the right person for everybody. Everyone like responds different to different personalities. But what I am doing is providing them credible information that they can take that information and apply it as they wish, because that's definitely one thing, educate and empower people so they have the knowledge to do it, because knowledge truly is power. And once you
Mm.
know how to apply it, that's where the magic happens. And that was what was so instrumental in my journey, because I used to be one of those people. I thought I ate clean. I used to be a marathon runner, and I used to be so mad that like no matter how many miles I ran, that like I still didn't have abs. I'm like, I'm doing like 12 hours of cardio a week. Like what am I doing wrong here? And it wasn't until I realized I'm eating too many calories. Number one, it's very offensive if you really stop and like look at how much food you're actually eating if you're not used to counting your calories. And number two, I'm not getting enough protein. I was eating just way too much carbs. But once I dialed those two factors in, like my body just started changing before my eyes. I'm like, that's what those fit girls do. That's what Jamie Eason do. I'm like, this is it. Cause like, I just thought it was never going to happen for me. I thought that like, oh, it was me, but my method was wrong. And once I realized that I needed to do the correct things, that it wasn't just you tried and it didn't work. It was like, I was doing it wrong. And how many other people are doing this stuff wrong too? And I had to share it. And I shared my journey with my fitness competitions, and I just kept getting questions and I just kept answering them. And, it's just history ever since.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great little journey you just gave us right there. And you talked about knowledge, and I firmly believe in knowledge and have this self-discipline and just changing your mindsets, everything, and just kind of just saying what I did a little bit ago. But when people don't seem to get the results, everyone wants shortcuts, obviously. And if they don't and if they don't get the results, and I guess that's what Uber and Netflix and Amazon Prime all told us: you get it instantly, anything you want. But I've noticed and seen it, with people with when I'm doing my, down at the gym training and coaching, that other people who ask me what I do, and I give them kind of a regimen and said, well, this worked for me. You can try this. Doesn't mean it won't work. But anyway, my point is that they lose a couple pounds again, then lose more, a couple more pounds next week, but then they start losing or not losing anything. And then they go in this negative downward spiral and get into this negative comfort zone and just, didn't work. I'll just go back to my old habits and continue eating, complex carbs and sugars and just forget about it. And just, no, you got to change your mindset. You got to, just because somebody's day 275 is not your day one, it's going to look completely different, and just, you got to be patient. You got to wait. You got to do the right things outside the gym, 7 hours of sleep, good recovery. If you mess up, okay, that's fine. But get back on it the next day. It's okay to mess up. We're all human beings. We're not perfect.
Absolutely. I say that to my clients all the time, like reset early, reset often. And you just can't bring that stuff with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm like nodding my head because like we're definitely in sync with the same messaging. Sure. It's just, I think something has to snap within a person where they just hit this point where they're like, you know what? Like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Sick and tired of starting over again. I'm sick and tired of feeling like crap. I'm sick and tired of just settling when, like, if you see somebody with like a certain physique that truly inspires you, the reality is, will you look exactly like that person? Probably not, but you can look like the best version of you. And so many people don't even know what their potential is because they just keep quitting. They just keep quitting and they just keep quitting. But like something inside you needs to snap where you're like, no, like I am going to find out. No, I am going to believe in myself. And no, actually, I can do this. You are going to push past your doubts. You are going to push past your fears, because the reality is you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by doing it. And when I see a client like really just internalize that and grasp that and digest that logic into every cell of their body, not only does their body change, like their entire life changes. I've seen like it catapults careers. It just empowers people in a way like nothing else can. And I'm sure you've experienced that in and of yourself. Once you accomplish a fitness goal or a physique goal, it's like I can't even describe it, because you feel like you can do anything because you can. You absolutely can.
Yeah, and it's a whole new energy. It's a whole new energy and like a whole new, a whole new lifestyle that your eyes finally open up to, and you're like, you never knew that like you just said, that you could feel this great and feel this way. And then obviously when you feel good, you're going to, and you look good, you're going to feel good. And, you walk around with your shoulders upright and you're walking around like strut a little bit. And and I agree 100% that, not everybody's going to look just like, I don't know, whoever the top fitness model is right now, but a lot of it is like, you don't know what's going on the outside, like, are they actually, or, what kind of, a lot of it's genes probably. I mean, a lot of it, what are they doing? Are they actually happy? Are they actually sacrificing too much? Are they actually, in a is her body actually really healthy being as way it's looking like it is? I mean, because, a lot of that's just not sustainable. Some of these people that they're doing, it's just like, well, just because, they look like this today doesn't mean that, I guess my point is that they're healthy. So you shouldn't just get ultimately in a discomfort zone just because you're not looking like that right now and go down that downward spiral.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that like the beauty of, challenging yourself and working on yourself is that, we're all a work in progress. And I always encourage my people, my clients, and anyone who follows me, like sometimes you really need to keep your eyes on your own plate. And this is where it can get dangerous because with all these like full day of eating videos out there and all these concepts of that you can just copy what somebody else eats and you're going to look like them. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like you can take that into consideration. You can just get an idea and see what works for somebody. But if you truly want to figure out what's going to work for you and you really are clueless, I mean, you can't afford to not invest in, working with a nutritionist or working with somebody who's actually experienced in this, because this is the thing that gets me. And I don't know if you feel this way. If my car breaks down and I need something, I'm going to go to a mechanic, right?
Sure.
If I need like something electrical done in my house, I'm going to hire an electrician. But like,
Sure.
why is it when people look at their body, something's not working right? They're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to Google that. Like, like the reality is like there are professionals out here who do this for a living. Like, and who are you to think that you can, I mean, do your research, don't get me wrong, but like, I think sometimes people just get like thinking they can figure it out themselves. And like, you're really just wasting your own time. And there is so much value in, working with a professional.
Yeah, not only wasting time, but just even money. Just because you go listen to your, like if you go back to Bro Science or just whoever goes on Instagram or whatever, you're wasting money. You're wasting the investment of what you put in just to say, well, they told me to buy all this, and this, these supplements, buy this, and it didn't work for me. And again, just like you said, all right, maybe it's time to go seek out a professional. And there's plenty of them out there. If you just, like you said, just do your research and go do a Google search for professionals, or, find a decent book that's published by, a person with a good background as far as, nutrition, fitness, and all this stuff goes, especially with like your academic background. I mean, I heard some people, they tell me they go to see their doctor every once in a while. And I don't know if this is true, and you might have more insight on this, but when they ask their doctor about nutrition or something, and their doctor obviously, I'm generally speaking, gives them some kind of advice or whatever. But I think medical doctors only have to do 8 hours of nutrition in medical school.
Yeah,
Could be
it's
wrong.
like on order. Yeah, it's like on order of 20 hours. And unfortunately, I have to agree with you. I do think that medical doctors are very ill-equipped to guide people with regards to proper nutrition. You got to remember, like medical doctors are out there to provide medicine as a solution. And, I was thinking about that. I used to get really like angry. I used to get really upset. I used to get very frustrated thinking about how like, well, why don't they try to help them from the core? Why don't they try to like teach them to eat better? But, when talking to some doctors, and again, I'm a realist, like my training is obviously in engineering. These doctors tell me, they're like, look, 90% of these people aren't going to stick to it. Like, so most of these people need something in the form of a pill. And I know that's really sad to say,
Very sad.
but like, if you look at like the majority of the people out there, I'm not talking like the people who listen to podcasts and listen to YouTube videos, but most people, just aren't going to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I do understand that logic to a very big extent, but the problem is like on a core level with just like the government and like the way, like the whole structure is set up. It's just like the pharma industry, the medicine, like it's not designed to make us feel any better. It's designed to sell drugs. It's designed to make money. It's designed to keep you sick. And, I feel like people have to really like want to get out of the matrix, so to speak, and
No,
stop
you're right.
drinking that Kool-Aid because, if you're in the matrix, like you're going to keep doing those types of things and you can get out of it. But like, it's a very big shift for the masses.
Yeah. No, I agree with exactly what you said. What is the saying that the money's in the treatment, not the cure?
Yep.
Exactly. And just, obviously if you go see a doctor and he's got, a gut and he's smoking cigarettes and stuff, I'm probably not going to take, a lot of nutrition and fitness advice from him. It's like, well, I mean, if you're going to give me this advice, bro, I can go seek somebody else out. But I guess, let's switch gears here because we might be just Yeah, we might be just,
Fair enough.
yeah, like beating a dead horse at this point as far as
Yeah.
that. But ultimately, like, if you're unhappy, in my point of view, if you're unhappy with your weight, your metabolism, how you feel, obviously,
Mhm.
obviously go seek out, somebody who's professional. But
For
I wanted,
sure.
I wanted to ask you that a couple things about, fasting, and how do you feel about
Mhm.
that? Because I've been personally trying to, I haven't incorporated a lot. I've done it, maybe I do it one day a week and
Mhm.
for 8 hours. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and see what actually you thought of, the benefits and if it's actually worth doing or not. So,
Yeah. So intermittent fasting, I think, is great for several reasons. I think it's fantastic at breaking plateaus. It's fantastic for insulin management.
mhm,
It's fantastic for folks who, need boundaries. It's not for everybody. There are also some cons to it. It can be a little bit more challenging for some women because, women are, designed to support a growing fetus. That's where our bodies are built. And for some women, they're more sensitive to hunger signals. So that can be more challenging for some. And obviously it's a person by person basis. But I do believe in intermittent fasting, but I do believe there needs to be context to it. It can't just be like eat in an 8-hour window or don't eat for a day and then eat a ton another day. Like you really still need to be mindful of calories.
sure.
You still need to have that context and boundaries, but it's a fantastic way to minimize insulin spikes, with the principle being concentrating your feeding window to be smaller, where you're going to only eat in a shorter time period as opposed to over a 24-hour period where you may be eating longer, because every time you eat you have an insulin spike. And every time you have an insulin spike, that insulin is released from the pancreas. The problem is when the pancreas is busy releasing insulin, the pancreas is not able to release glucagon, which is the fat storing hormone. So by concentrating those insulin spikes like an accordion over a shorter time frame, you're giving your body more residence time for glucagon to do its job. So the science, the principles are very sound, but there are limits to it. And I do think it's a very simple way for people to see improvements without having to drop their calories. Anytime I can see a client is starting to hit a plateau, but I know they're not quite ready to like do a calorie reduction yet. And if I can get them prolonged progress for another week or 2 or 3 without cutting their caloric intake, I'm absolutely going to do everything I can to keep that person like metabolically like satisfied and filled, as opposed to just cutting calories arbitrarily when it's not necessary. The goal is always to keep somebody fueled with as much possible calories as possible and only taking them away when it's absolutely necessary.
Is it one of the common myths? They think that, or when I say most people think that they have to eat under 1,200 calories in order to lose weight.
Yeah, that's definitely a myth. I mean, reality is if you start under fueling your body, you're going to start eating away at muscle mass. You're going to start compromising your metabolism. And even though you might be losing weight on like the top level, the composition of that weight may not be what you really want. And this is what I warn my clients about all the time, because if you do these quick fixes, yes, you lost weight, but what about your body fat to muscle mass ratio? Because what people really want is not, they really don't want to lose weight per se. They want to lose fat.
Hmm.
And you're not going to look the way you really think you're going to look by just weighing a certain number on the scale. You're going to look the way you want by hitting a certain body fat percentage. So it's a very big recalibration, especially for women, to hear that, like, you could be weighing 20, 30, even 40 pounds more than what you thought was your goal weight and look fantastic if it's more muscle and less fat.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's part of the bad narratives as long as in diet culture. I guess that fat is the enemy, but
Mhm.
it's not always that way. And that, I don't know, I've read, a couple of studies where sugar is actually, they found evidence that sugar companies actually paid these, I don't know, companies or whatever, just to say that, or make up these studies where fat, like saturated fats, were the enemy and making people unhealthy or whatever. And it wasn't sugar or whatever. And, it's, I don't know, it's just really bad in this industry that, these companies manipulate people thinking that, certain, obviously, like, oh, you have fat's the enemy, don't eat anything with fat or whatever. Or, and obviously,
Mhm.
sugar seems to be the getting struck down in modern times now. But there for a while, it was just like, eat sugar, do whatever you want to. And, it's also that these, food companies are also manipulating the brain by, sweet versus salty and, telling your brain, I was watching a one of those food eating contests or whatever, and this guy had like
Mhm.
an 8-pound Sunday, and he
Oh
got, yeah,
God.
I think it was 8 pounds. I could be wrong. It was so ridiculous. Nobody should be eating it, but um, the point is that he got to a certain point where he cannot eat anymore, but he switched over and just grabbed a few French fries, and instantaneously he was ready to start eating it again, more of that ice cream. And I was like, man, these research people and scientists have figured out how to manipulate the brain to figure out, oh, what my, I guess, or it could be evolution of the mind. I don't know, but figure out, oh, my brain wants this now instead of, I don't know, a whole vegetable or something, if you want to say. But it's wild. It's wild to me.
Yeah. The reality is nowhere in nature does high fat, high sugar food exist. Like there are foods that are high in fat, like an avocado, like olives, like olive oil, right? But
Sure.
like you never find that combination of high fat, high carb together in nature. And that's a man-made thing. If you think about like ice cream, these cookies, these treats, these like that's not natural. That's man-made. And because of that, if you really were eating like real whole food and like, if you were eating something like fruit or you were eating something like just natural foods, like you're not going to have the same response. And I think that like with, the industrial revolution and just the modernization of like farming and like the more in depth we got with the science of food and the more food has become engineered over the years and centuries, you have to ask yourself, is that actually a good thing per se? Because I think that the advancements in science, like I'll give you a perfect example, like artificial sweeteners. Now, the scientist in me, the engineer in me is going to tell you guys that like I think artificial sweeteners are brilliant if you look at it from the scientific mechanism that like you can eat something that tastes exactly like sugar but has 0 calories. Like that's like from a scientific perspective, that's phenomenal,
Sure.
right? That's
Sure.
remarkable that you can experience that. But at the same time, you got to ask yourself, like, well, is this safe? Is that like you know what I'm saying?
Oh
Because
yeah.
you look at something like sucralose, right? It's the artificial sweetener in Splenda and the basis of so many sodas and things that we know. And that's not really the reason why it works is when your body eats that, it's a sucrose molecule, but it has chlorine atoms bound to it. So the reason why your body doesn't absorb that sugar into the bloodstream is because your body identifies it as a poison. It sees that chlorine, that carbon chlorine bond, your body automatically excretes it through the small intestine because your body's like, this is poison. We're not going to eat that. So it's like, again, the scientist in me is like, wow, that's a very brilliant mechanism and that works, quote unquote. But
Mhm.
it's like, is that good though?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, that our body, in my opinion, I mean, a lot of people would probably disagree, but in my opinion, our bodies are not made to handle stuff like that. And so
No.
yeah, I mean, I do it too. I'm going to go out and get some random stuff that I probably shouldn't be eating, but it's not, maybe one day a week, if that. But
Mhm.
I can tell a difference that my body's like, what the hell did you put in here, man? Like, and you
Mhm.
get up and, like, you kind of like, I got an ache in my shoulder then. And,
Mhm.
it's weird, man. My body did not like that at all. But I think a lot of people just don't, they don't register that. And, one thing that helped me was that, if I wrote down, like I was writing down a food journal for a week.
Mhm.
This was on RP, and I was like, okay, what did I eat before this week? And then how am I eating differently? And I would just write down little notes like, oh, felt good this day. Nah, I didn't feel really good this day. But a lot of people just keep going on and just, this is the way I feel, no big deal. And they don't really understand
Mhm.
what's going on inside it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, from a scientific standpoint, like you also said, it's just, yeah, it's I guess one of our great creations that, we gave mankind, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's also not.
I think one thing that people have a problem with is that they think the idea of eating healthier as like losing control and like you're going to be missing out on something when the reality is the lack of boundaries with regards to what you eat is complete chaos.
Mhm.
And it's a really big mindset shift to acknowledge that like I'm not telling people to, stay within a certain calorie limit or stay under certain limits because I'm trying to like withhold fun and joy and all these types of things. Like that's not the goal is to withhold joy. The goal is to make it so that way your body can function and feel good and your liver is not overloaded and your body isn't like lacking enzymes to break down all this garbage and nonsense that you just put into it. Like there's a reason for it. And just like out on a road, on a highway, like there's stoplights, there's speed limits, there's yield signs, like there's lanes that exist, because without that, mass transportation would be chaos. It's the same thing with your body. It would be complete chaos if you didn't put any limits whatsoever, and if it just became a free for all. And you can just look at the average American and see that that is true. Like it is true. And sugar is, and food overall is widely abused for in a drug like manner.
Yeah, no, I'm currently reading. It's called Sacred Cow, and I think it's by Rob Wolf and Diana Rogers. And that
Mm-hmm.
their point, or one of their points, was that we're living in times where um, we could die from too much food and not too little food. And
Agreed.
yeah, and it's just so wild to me. And I got this kind of working theory in my head that with we don't have to go down news and politics, obviously, but
Sure.
but these food shortages keep coming up now, right? And
Mhm.
well, maybe we could use a food shortage, I mean, I mean, and that's probably bad to say, but
No, it's not bad to say. It's the
well,
truth.
yeah, but kind of bouncing around everything and circling around we've been talking about that. If people cannot just go to the store and obviously, go out and go down through the center aisles and get their, I don't know, whatever Cheerios or Fruit Loops or whatever people eat nowadays, that well, maybe I have to go outside and actually get some real food now and like learn the differences and like just educate themselves. I mean, that's one thing that's helped me. And I'm not an aficionado of nutrition by any means, but I just know what works for me, and I just keep sticking with it. But yeah, so I don't know if it's a good theory or a bad theory, but I think that there could see some benefits from it. And with that said, that I read a statistic the other day, or actually heard it on a podcast. I think heard it on a podcast that the average male weighs 190 pounds right now. That's 20 some years old or whatever, and
Mhm.
the average female is 170 pounds. And then they compared it to the Civil War era, where the average male was 140 pounds. A male was 140 pounds, and I forgot what the female was, but it's like, man, that was
Mm.
roughly a little over 100 years ago. But man, the average person is that big now, and yeah, they compare that to all, obviously all the increases in food and the junk food crisis, or not a crisis, but a junk food surplus, I guess you could say. And just how it's just, we've made it the standard American diet so easy to feed a family of four to go run through McDonald's and pay, I don't know, $10, $15 to feed a family of four, compared to actually going out and, getting some lean meat and whatever else you want to eat with the vegetables or whatever. So,
Yeah, no, I think that um, when I start working with people, the one thing that's really crazy that I acknowledge is that people need to relearn food. And it sounds so silly because people have this very black and white, all or nothing concept with regards to healthy eating. I think some people are prepared mentally for sacrifice to get where they want to be, but they don't realize that it's not necessarily just about eating less, it's about eating correctly. And when you truly are fueling your body properly, I'm sure when you were doing like your meal plan, like your high protein plan, it's
yep,
a lot of food. I don't know about you, but
it
it
is.
is a good amount of food that you need to be consuming. And people just are not getting enough of the appropriate nutrients. You're getting too much of some, not enough of the others. And that's why taking a macros based approach to nutrition is very eye opening, because macros is what makes up the caloric content of food. You still need calories, you still need to eat,
Sure.
but it's just that distribution of calories. What types of calories are you consuming? Because once you start dialing that in and shifting it, like, you're going to feel better, you're going to be full and satisfied, and you're not going to be missing anything. You're not missing out.
Yeah. Well, no, along with that, I mean, if you're eating the correct macros, I mean, obviously you're going to get, probably the micros, that
Mhm.
micronutrients, I'm saying, that you need as well. And, you won't hopefully not have any deficiencies with that. But I mean, yeah, you're probably not getting the same value as compared to, eating a box of donuts just for dinner or whatever, obviously. But I mean, I wanted to ask you though, do you have your clients supplement, with multivitamins, creatine, protein or anything, or is that just, base or situation depending?
So I do have a supplement company, but as the owner of a supplement company, and I'm a food scientist, so I used to own a dietary supplement manufacturing company where I would private label for brands all over the world, and I've created thousands of products for other people. The thing is, I'm going to be the first person to tell you you don't need supplements. Supplements are a convenient, economical way to get certain nutrients that are challenging to get in terms of real whole food. So, for some folks, like, do you need a protein supplement? No, but do you really want to be eating that much egg whites and that much chicken? Like, it's up to you. It's up to you. And like, honestly, it does get a little bit more convenient and economical. And when I create supplements specifically that for things to supplement the diet, like literally, like meaning it's hard to get that amount of nutrients from real food in a very practical, meaningful way. So, for instance, I have a fiber supplement. Like the amount of spinach and seeds and flax and stuff you would need to eat is just, it's impractical. So, I think supplements can be very beneficial when used properly. But like I said, do you need supplements? No. Are they a convenient, economical way to hit your nutrient needs? Yes. So I'm fine with whatever people want to do. And that's a choice that I leave to my client. And
Mm.
I don't push supplements on people. Like I said, I'm the first to let people know you don't need them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I used to think that, obviously back in college and the bro science days and stuff that, I
Hmm.
had to have, pre-workout and, I
Hmm.
had to have, casein protein and I don't know what else I was on back then, some kind of other probably
Hmm.
energy. Basically it was just a box of caffeine. But, I found that, that working for me that immediately after my workout, Renaissance would tell me that, hey, drink a protein shake, but put, I think that was like half a bottle of Gatorade or not half a bottle, but some Gatorade mixed in with it as well. And that's all you really needed. And they said, if you wanted to do casein and creatine, that was on you. But, I got to where
Hmm.
now, I mean, I just strictly go whey protein, obviously caffeine with, throughout my day with
Hmm.
my coffee or whatever. And then,
Hmm.
creatine, I go back and forth with, but other than that, I noticed that, yeah, I analyze how I feel. I feel good during my workouts. I don't feel wrecked. I feel good throughout the day. I have sustained energy, and I was like, I don't need anything else. So I do pop a multivitamin here, and then we don't have to go down this COVID road either. But when COVID hit, or I guess it's still here, I don't know, and that they were. I forgot where I got this from, but they were finding out there were a lot of people who were having trouble with COVID were lacking vitamin D, I think it was, and so I
Hmm.
did up my vitamin D for like 3,000 IU's, I think. But other than that,
Hmm.
all I was really doing, I get the most, I feel like, from my food sources. So, but I don't eat out a lot. I pretty much eat the same thing almost every meal. I mean, I eat like a boring person, and it's not sexy, it's not cool, but it works for me. So, I mean, but yeah, I'm not, when I do go out, I'm not afraid to, splurge a little bit or get a burger and fries, but that's very rare
Hmm.
for me. So, but yeah,
Hmm.
but it's not cool and it's not sexy and I'm not a foodie and people don't like to hear
Hmm.
that, they're like, "Oh, how can you do that?" And I was like, food's not a big deal for me. It's just, I see food as fuel, kind of what we've been saying.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, do I like to go out and eat at cool restaurants? Yeah. But again, if people, ask me my favorite meal ever, it's kind of like, I don't know, that it was good, but it was not like it just blew me away. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because I really encourage people, like, there no food is bad. A burger and fries is not bad. It's all about how it breaks down in the body versus what your body needs.
mhm,
And I take a very flexible approach to nutrition with regards to flexible dieting. I track my macros regularly. Do I do it all the time? The answer is no, because obviously it becomes kind of second nature after a while. But when I have a specific goal, I track. And for me personally, eating out is one thing that allows me to feel normal. It allows me to feel like I'm not on a diet per se.
mhm,
And I'm just eating for my goals. I don't even like the word diet.
yeah.
And I just think it's important. I tell people that, like, I have no doubt that anybody could lose a lot of weight in a vacuum. Like, you look at these people on, like, The Biggest Loser, right? They'll lose a lot of weight, but it's just like, if that means that, like, you can't go out to eat, if that means that, like, if you have a favorite meal, like, I love pasta. There's this one pasta dish I make, I love it. And does that mean I can never eat that again? And the answer is, what I've found for myself is I found ways to incorporate it, and I'm happy with my body and I love my weight and I love the way I look, and it allows me to feel normal. And I think what people need to understand is that you need to learn how to integrate the foods that you truly love within your new lifestyle, because, like I said, it's establishing a new normal.
Mhm.
And I think that once people have that mindset that it's not going to be all or nothing. It's not going to be the same BS you used to do, but it's not going to be just eating like dry chicken either. And it's a hybrid, and you have to take full responsibility on, creating what that's going to look like for yourself. And for some people, they get very overwhelmed and really like, is this good? Is that bad? Is this
Yeah.
good? Is this good? And, that's where some folks do need a little bit more support and guidance to navigate that.
Yeah, I get asked all the time, like we've talked, just like I said earlier, just what are you eating? And then they're, well, just tell me what to eat. And I was like, well,
Hmm.
I don't know what you like. I mean, just eat whatever you want
Hmm.
to, but just be smart about it. But
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you, just kind of said something about it, just that is, I seem to notice more body image issues in modern times or society, whatever you want to say, today, I guess, compared to, back before social media. And, and I've noticed that, or I read something back in 2018, I think the UK banned, marketing that showed people who was considered to have unobtainable beauty, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's still going on. I mean, that was back in 2018, 2017 when that was going on,
Hmm.
but I think that, a lot of people just cannot really see, like they see these false images, obviously the body image issues. And, do you know who Jordan Peterson is? This is my point. This is what I'm trying to get.
Yes.
So he was actually talking about working with a client, and you may have heard this before, but she was suffering from body image issues, and that, he actually sat beside her and was like, hey, I want you to draw an outline of your leg on this paper, and then I'll draw mine. And he said his was like 40 or 50% bigger than hers, but she could not see it in herself. But like she could look at other people and notice, like, differences in their bodies and, what looked good, what didn't look good compared to them, but she just could not see it in herself. And I think that, it's just that I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's social media. I don't know if it's diet culture. I don't know what it is, but we just see so much of this now. And people are just setting themselves up for failure ultimately.
Yeah. It's that's a whole can of worms. I think we could talk
Exactly.
about that one
Yeah.
for
We don't have to
hours.
go down that whole road, but I
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I do think that it's an issue. I agree that it's an issue. I think that, people really need to be grounded in a true sense of self love, self care, and just knowing who they are as a person. And I think that social media has made it very challenging for people to, truly identify with that because we're just bombarded with images. And the reality is, sex sells, and whatever looks good is it when I say it sells, and here's why. Like the way these algorithms work, it's not even like an intentional marketing push. There's a part of our brain that is just wired to gaze a little bit longer, like on something. Like those types of things do psychologically stop the scroll. And as long as like those psychological factors are going to be true, like it's going to be challenging. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Oh,
like
I
there are,
agree.
like you can't just say like, oh, well, we need to stop that messaging. And, I do think that people need to embrace themselves, but like there's something in us that is wired to perceive certain things as desirable. Like it's human nature. And I just think that there is a lot of vulnerable, impressionable, um, people out there who may not have the best self-esteem, that it can be very damaging. And I think, context matters. And for those who do have that level of influence out there, I think that they really need to take that influence very seriously, being full disclosure with regards to, folks who have had surgeries, folks who use anabolic steroids, folks who do these little extra things that the average person isn't going to know. I do think that there is a responsibility to be transparent in what you're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just thinking about while you were talking, like, is that, I hope this is the right word, primal
Mhm.
instinct, when you talk about gazing, I mean,
It's
obviously
true.
I think it's part of, what, I can't remember where I got this from, but, a guy will see a girl and obviously if it has a comparison or measurable hip to waist ratio that
Yep.
they like, yeah, that's the reason they're like, oh, this is what, like when you said sex sells, this is what guys are wanting. And then I don't know what the counterintuitive for that is in females, but yeah, that's the reason, like we market it toward this, obviously. And obviously, and we don't, and porn is $1 billion industry, obviously. And that's a whole nother, again, soapbox we don't need to go down at all by any means.
For
But
sure.
yeah, that's
No.
just, yeah, but it's just wild. I guess it's just reproductive nature. I don't know what that is, but it's in our brain that we see something like that. And it's like, that's why we like person A compared to person B compared to person C. So
And it's true though. And I think that like, there used to be a part of me that used to be like, that's wrong. And we need to have better images and we need to be more inclusive. And trust me, I'm all for inclusivity. I'm
right.
all for all kinds of different shapes and all the sizes. But the reality is, because I remember one day I was struggling with my social media and I'm like, why is the algorithm messed up? Why is nobody on my page? And like, like the nature of my content is very like educational and whatnot. And like every now and then I'll post like a bikini picture. Every now and then I'll do those types of things, but I just don't do that on the regular. And I used to ask myself, I'm like, do I really need to be posting this type of stuff to be seen? And I and I used to ask myself that question. And it's just like the reality is people do hold this, they stop the scroll a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, you need to have an interesting content. You need to have value.
Sure.
You can't just be like, even like people that are going to be effective at delivering messages that stick online, you not only need to like know what you're talking about, you don't only need to have value, you need to be excellent at capturing attention.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to go about that. That could just be having a really good question. That could be showing a really interesting visual. And, the reality is the human physique is on the top of that list.
Well, no, I'm glad you said that, just because, brand management, brand awareness is something that I've been more looking into too. And that just, you don't have to show off, pictures of yourself, half naked just to get views or whatever. And if you're doing it, it's really not the, probably not the
type of,
exactly. It's not the audience that you're wanting to get. It's not the message you're wanting to send out. So, again, that's for all the people who want to go twerking on Instagram, which, I mean, fine, if they're getting paid, if they're getting paid and they're happy to do it, I don't care. But yeah, it's almost like, hey, there's a difference in professionalism and I don't want to say amateur, but, again, that's just not the message I would want to send out, and I've turned down people on this podcast just because of, their background stuff. I'm like, nah, I don't think that's the message. Even though that's great. You got a big following. I love it. Cool. But that's not the message that I want to send out. And sometimes I go back and reflect on that. It's like, I don't know if that was the best move or not, but something I'm still working with, trial and error, like everyone else. And I do think social media and this whole internet age is still kind of the wild, wild west, and we're still trying to navigate it and figure it out at the same time. Because, I don't think, obviously there is a lot of good things to it, just because, having this conversation, would have not been able to do this years ago, obviously. And all the information that we're accessible to. And, if somebody would have been telling me the bro science, obviously, again, back in 1960 or whatever, it's like, yeah, cool. That's great. That's great. That's awesome. And you can't even go check their facts to make sure what they're saying is correct. And that's the good thing about it now. There's probably a lot of liars back then too, by the way. I just thought of that.
It's really interesting, like with the change in social media, this is where I've personally landed. And with how much information is out there right now, it's become so much more competitive. How do you present your brand? Yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
To me, I've taken it personally as a challenge to level up my content, because you have to break through the noise. And that means you need to be creative. You need to be smart. And instead of that being like a, man, I need to shake my ass, or man, what do I do? It needs to be what am I going to do that's unique, that rises above the noise, that captures attention and helps people in a meaningful way. And I used to get so like angry about that. I used to be like, man, I used to be able to just make a post. People who followed me would see my post and I didn't have to do all this extra. But you know what though? It's an opportunity for all of us to level up, for all of us to level up our content, because attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And if you really want to break through the noise, like you can't be boring. Like you got to be interesting.
Exactly.
It's if you want to be educational, but you still have to have like an element of entertainment in there. And the folks that master that are going to be the folks that break through the noise in the next couple of years here. And anybody who's like thinking that you could just do more of the same, like you're going to die. Like you're literally, your brand's going to die. Like if you don't level up, you're going to die, in my opinion.
Christine, I know we're getting a little short on time here, and I have one more question I wanted to ask you here while we were talking about sugar and stuff, but I forgot my brain changed. But so I want to see what your thoughts are on this. That you know who Floyd Mayweather is? So it's been said that, or cited, whatever you want to say, that he would drink Coke or eat a Snickers after his boxing workouts and matches just for the sugar. And so I have a competition this weekend, CrossFit competition. And I was just wondering, and there's apparently some science to it. There's an elite CrossFitter who he said he eat so many Snickers after 90-minute workouts or whatever that he needed to, I guess, restore the glycogen back into his muscles or whatever. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that. Was that actually fact or myth, I guess?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that's a fact. I mean, when your glycogen is depleted, these short chains of glucose, they're going to have the fastest glycemic index. You're going to replenish the body fastest. It's very sound science. It makes very logical sense.
So it doesn't matter if it's a short workout duration or a 90-minute duration, but
So it's going to depend on how much depletion really occurred. So you got to ask yourself, the cells can hold roughly 400 to 500 grams of carbohydrates. That's assuming like if you didn't eat anything, your cells by themselves, your muscle cells can hold 400 to 500 grams of carbs. Up can be more if you have more muscle mass. Let's just say 500 grams of carbs. So the question you have to ask yourself, 500 times 4, what's that? 2,000. Did you burn more than 2,000 calories? Are you completely depleted? So you're going to have to look at the math a little bit and see like how much you actually burned. But the reality is, how much replenishment do you really need to do? Because I think that some people take glycogen replenishment a little too far. Like look at Gatorade. It's like way over engineered for what the average person needs. Are you really like out here on the field playing entire like football games and burning all these calories? Or did you just, do a little workout, burned like, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 calories? Do you really need all of that? So I think you have to look at the context of what you burned.
That makes perfect sense. So obviously if you go out for a brisk walk around the neighborhood, you probably don't really need a Snickers bar and a Coke.
Exactly.
Okay.
But again, yeah, it just depends. I'd say like for Floyd, if he's going round after round after round, I mean, that dude's got a high metabolism. I'm sure he is depleted, but I mean, you can't apply what a professional athlete is doing and apply it to like most people.
Correct. No, I agree 100%. But yeah, I heard that and I was like, well, I knew there was some truth to it, but I knew it was not, some people are like, oh, don't eat any sugar or whatever. I was like, well,
Yeah.
he's an elite athlete. There's got to be some little science to it. He knows what
Yeah.
he's doing. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
but this was great. If you want to go ahead and plug your book and if people want to find you and all that good stuff, feel free to do that.
Yeah. So you guys can find my book, Unlock Your Macrotype by Christine Hronec, Hronec. It's available everywhere books are sold. You can find it on Amazon in audiobook, ebook. You can also find it like Barnes and Noble. Like again, everywhere books are sold. You can find me on gaugegirltraining.com. You can also find me on Gauge Girl Training YouTube, Instagram at Gauge Girl Training. You can also learn more about my supplements at Gauge Life Sups on IG, as well as gaugelife.com. And I now am on TikTok. I've dove in and I'm doing the things. So I'm also on TikTok. Yeah. Not doing the dances. I'm doing my own thing. I'm, still staying true to my brand, but I'm learning it. So I'm on TikTok as well, Gauge Girl Training.
Well, thank you again. This was great. Appreciate you having a little chat with me.
Yes, this was so much fun. I really appreciate talking to you. You're such a wonderful host, and thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, we're out of here, people. Good night.